Well, good morning. It is the first Wednesday of May. And for example, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I got some stuff in the notes, but something I want to start with real quick. This kind of takes a little turn from everything that I was planning on. And then I got a question for you in a moment there, Sam. But speaking of mental health, I got a friend who has been battling cancer for quite a while. One of the sweetest people you'd ever meet. She actually did succumb and lose this morning to the fight against cancer. So she has moved on. Very religious person. So I'm sure she's in a much better place than here. But, you know, kind of a way to start with, that had to have been something that was mentally tough on her and her family. I don't know if she was a cannabis user per se, but I know that had to have been a tough battle for a few years that they had fought with, for sure.
Yeah, my sympathies and condolences. We're definitely without question, in a tough time,
Mhm.
um, and we need all the support and the help, along with love, that we can get.
Yeah, it's one of those that I was kind of scrolling through Facebook yesterday and I saw her husband make a post, and she hadn't, succumbed at that point, but just something in my head went, it's coming. I could just tell by the verbiage. It was like, this is coming. And this morning I looked and saw that I guess about 7 something this morning she had passed. So, but something I wanted to ask you, aside from, how are you? We didn't get to speak last week, but what did you think about that sesh event that we had attended last week, or on 420?
420, it was a super experience that
Right?
in order to believe it, you would have had to been there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great gathering. A lot of different people that we're hopefully going to have some of their videos up here shortly. Going to bring them on to discuss some of their products. We met a lot of interesting individuals. One actually, we're waiting to get back to him, but you knew someone very well at that sesh party that we're going to hopefully get them and their products on here shortly.
Oh gosh, I mean, it was like a big reunion. The industry itself truly is very small to when it comes to
Yeah.
the connoisseurs and the people who have a high vibration, um, for the cannabis space, the industry itself. It was just a great meetup, and it was also beyond just being a meetup. Uh, Exposure for business and business, from business to business, from business to consumer. The exposure was totally optimum and premium across the board.
Yeah, it was great seeing Gip again, and he's got a wonderful new product, which one day when you have free time, and I know how much that is lacking, we need to go down to his shop because you weren't able to try it. But man, that stuff was good. It was, break it down real quick. It's an infused drink that they make with pomegranate, fresh fruit, and whatnot. You cannot take the alcohol with THC and combine them, but he's made alcohol based flavors of the THC in these drinks. And man, they were good.
That sounds like we need to make a trip very, very soon. Um, we got some planning that we got to do down on Edgewood. Is he open up on Edgewood yet?
I don't think so. I'll reach out to him and double check because when we discussed it was the one south of Atlanta. So I need to find
Okay.
out. Let me look into that and I'll get back to you on that. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. All right.
But we got a couple of notes. One of them is going to be here in Georgia, and we're going to get to this because this actually happened last Wednesday evening, which was big, big news. I was able to attend the webinar because it was not in person; it was all virtual. But a couple of things that we got coming real quick. A couple of different, what they're calling quick take on 5 ideas. These are some things that are happening federally right now. The Prepare Act. I don't know if you've heard of this or not. It's the federal government should decide to legalize cannabis. What would the process look like? So David Joyce and Hakeem Jeffries, one Republican, one Democrat out of Ohio and New York, think we should start getting ready for it now. The Prepare Act would establish a commission to decide how to set up legal marketplaces. The regulatory system would be modeled after the current regulations governing alcohol, which we've kind of talked about before, how important it would be to have the regulations set forth, and alcohol would be a fair model. So the Prepare Act is something that is being, we could say, prepared right now. What are your quick thoughts on that and how that could help move these things forward?
Well, the thoughts on anything that would give us leverage to move forward in the industry, allows us to get to that 100% that we're looking to be at. So it's definitely great. I'd love to know how the inner workings of it applies to the industry, so that way we can let other states be aware of the ins and outs of it and how it can be set up.
Right? Because the way I'm understanding it, and I'm going to do some more research into this later, but they're going to set it up kind of like they do the Alcohol Commission Board. So you'll have a base regulation of how much potency the product could have, how much could be sold at one time, how to look for intoxication possibly of individuals. So that would be a decent modeling act. The second, which I think is important, is the Small Business Tax Equity Act. This is set forth by Republican Earl Blumenhern from Oregon. Would really like to set up an exception to the 2080E of the International Revenue Code so that state legal cannabis businesses could take deductions just like any other legal business. Hence his introduction of the Small Business Tax Equity Act. Now, if that could go federally, how big would that be?
So totally big, totally. And this goes back to the fight that Chuck Schumer's been waging. So it definitely runs synonymous with it.
Well, it's very important for the fact that we can make sure before these businesses, especially as we talked about these smaller ones, unlike these ones that are going to be a conglomerate in multiple states, they can set up to have that equity, to have those deductions and have what they deserve fairly and legally to make sure, A, they stay in business with these big companies, but that they're able to survive and have deductions that are needed.
Okay, that is it.
And now the fourth one, the HOPE Act. I think we talked a little bit about this. You've got representatives on both sides again, would like to see states set up their marijuana expungements. The HOPE Act would provide money to states to help them process expungements requests more efficiently, in part by automating the process and funding legal clinics to assist those who want to clear their records.
Nah, that's really dope. What state is that again, Nate?
Well, right now, I mean, all of this is federal, but your representatives are Dave Joyce from Ohio, a Republican, and Alexandra Cortez, Democrat out of New York. They're working together on this HOPE Act. But these are all, even though representation is in the state level, these are federal things that are being worked on.
Okay.
All five of these. And then you have the CBD regulation bill. Again, both sides of the aisle introduced two bills that would direct the Food and Drug Administration to regulate hemp and CBD. So kind of what they're going a little bit further on that is the Hemp and Hemp-Derived CBD Consumer Protection and Marketing Stabilization Act, which is of this year, would make hemp, cannabidiol derived from hemp, and other hemp-derived products lawful for use as dietary supplement unless otherwise directed by the FDA. So the FDA would be getting involved to make sure that it's regulated, that it's legal, that it's marketable. And the CBD Production Safety and the Standardization Act directs the FDA to regulate CBD as the agency would for other food ingredients, setting requirements for quality and labeling, among other areas.
Okay.
So again, these are things we'll need to keep an eye out because these are federal things that they are pushing for. Now, of course, we know how that works. Will it go on the full federal end? Not sure. They're trying, but it may at least be able to derive out into the states. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully, all these bills pass, because I think all these will help the industry substantially in multiple realms.
Right. Now it sounds like it will.
I mean, it's very important because, I mean, look at those five things right there, from preparing, getting things ready, your Small Business Act, your HOPE Act, and your CBD regulations, I think it's a great start. And, we've used the word incremental, but hey, this is something I guess a year ago, I don't even think we would have been talking about at this moment.
Nah,
So
you're
this could
right.
be highly important.
Yeah. Nah, it's like I said, anything that deals with the progress for the industry, these are the small steps that's going to get us to the top.
Mhm. No, absolutely. In Minnesota, for example, legislative process continues in Minnesota. It's slow, but it's where an adult use legalization bill went through so many different committees that they're not even keeping record of it anymore. But this past week, the House voted in favor of the measure, and they debated late into the night, discussed it. The Senate is scheduled to vote on the companion bill, which has been on its own committee. The bill will go to the conference committee because at this point, what's another committee, right? Just keep going and going and going. However, there's been a deadline. The deadline for the legislation to send the bill to the governor is May 22nd. Governor Tim Walz is expected to sign the measure. So we have to keep an eye on it and see what goes forth.
All right.
So that's a good step. Delaware now. Been a long trip, but it's been allowed to adult use cannabis in Delaware. Representative Ed Owansky has introduced a bill to legalize for years, each time getting closer and closer and closer, but falling short time after time. After 5 years of countless meetings, debates, negotiations, conversations, he states, I'm grateful that we have reached the point where Delaware has joined a growing number of states and has legalized and regulated adult recreational use for personal individuals. He was quoted in High Times along with Governor John Kerry, who has long opposed adult use legalization and voted the bill out. Kerry did not sign the bill to legalize and set up market, but allowed them to become law without his signature. States, I want to be clear that my views on this issue have not changed, and I understand there are those who share my views who will be disappointed in my decision not to veto it. I came to this decision because I believe we spent too much time focused on this issue when Delawareans face more serious, pressing concerns every day. It's time to move on. So, in this statement, the governor, so the moral of the story seems if you can't change hearts and minds on an issue, perhaps you can wear them down with persistence. So, you've got a governor who doesn't agree, but he's going ahead and allowing it to become a law regardless. So, what is your kind of basic thought on that?
Um, that shows that he is getting pushed and nudged into making the decision that he really doesn't want to. That's what it really sounds like more than anything. But once again, the total overall mind reset needs to happen
Right.
on the outlook of the industry. They just don't know enough. They haven't taken the time to do the research or allocate any tax dollars to do the research. These are things that are interest of the public, and they have to pay attention to it. They're not doing it.
No, absolutely. And, he keeps talking about how every time he's vetoed it, he's vetoed it. But this time he's not going to sign to veto it. He's not signing his approval, but he's allowing it to move forth with majority agreements. So at least it is becoming something that is going to be effective in Delaware, I would say, in the next few months.
Okay.
Now, we're going to switch a little bit here. You, of course, remember a few years back where we had an individual here who was in the Olympics, but was stripped and not allowed to compete due to different levels of cannabis use, correct?
Michael Phelps.
Yep. What about this? Well, remember, that was the swimmer. Remember the runner. She was dealing with the death of her mother, wasn't it? Or her
Shakari
mother
Richardson.
was, yeah, and was it the death or was she just very ill?
The death of her mother, I think.
I think it was too.
Somebody.
That's why.
It was a death. It wasn't. It wasn't
That's what I was
a.
thinking. I just was trying to
Yeah.
double check if you could remember for sure. Now, how about this? Here's another story. U.S. Olympic long jumper Tara Davis Woodall served a 1 month suspension and had her national indoor title stripped after testing positive earlier this year for a psychoactive compound found in marijuana. The U.S. Anti Doping Agency announced the penalties for the 23-year-old out of the University of Texas who finished sixth at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. Her ban concluded last week, but the penalty also included the loss of the long jump title she won at the indoor nationals shortly before the sample was collected on February 17th. THC is a special category of the banned substance that allowed for the 3 month sanction if the athlete can establish their use of the substance accord without competition and was unrelated to the sport's performance. The USDA said the sanction could be further reduced to 1 month if the athlete completes an approved treatment program. World regulators are constantly updating the ban list and have increased the THC threshold for positive tests to fall more in line with pro sports legals across the globe. But the World Anti Doping Agency still classifies THC as a substance of abuse because of its frequently used outside of the context of sports. So, how much could this hurt her now?
It hurts her and it hurts all the athletes behind them.
Mhm.
Um, the the Anti-Doping Association um, gets their validity from disqualifying individuals because of dope. Um, and as long as they have that on their schedule, it's going to be that same way for years to come.
Right. Now, two things that I personally don't like is you've got stuff that, even though we talked earlier about legislation and slow growth, you've got so many different states, and I'm not sure where Texas stands, but you can buy these products. You can buy them legally. You can buy these at these stores, but yet it's still on their list of a failed substance. Now, on the second part, not only is she being stripped and suspended, she has to complete a treatment program. And if she completes a treatment program, then it gets knocked down to 3 months to 1 month. But she still is going to be stripped. She's still going to have penalties. And you're constantly changing the banned list. How unfair is all of that? Constantly.
1 second, Nate.
Yeah, you're good. But here you are, you're suspending her, you're stripping her. You're saying almost at any time we can change what is banned, what isn't banned. So she might take something in March that's legal, and now she gets tested in May and it's illegal, and her ban could still be used, could still be stripped from her. And I don't understand why she has to complete some kind of treatment program. I'd be very interested to see what that treatment program is, what it involves, what it entails. Is it similar to, I don't know, a drug rehabilitation program? That's something we'll definitely have to look into more, because they're constantly moving the goalposts on her and all athletes, to be honest.
And just to add on to that comment, Nate, the biggest thing is that it goes by an old standard, and that old standard in today's time is still plaguing people, and it plagues their livelihood,
Right,
it plagues their future opportunities, any type of future earnings, especially from the standpoint of what athletes have to deal with, wear and tear on their body,
right,
mentally, emotionally, being subjected to following their dreams and trying to accomplish on a high level just to all have it taken away from you.
right.
There's a sacrifice, mind, body, and soul that every athlete goes through. And you got these agencies that are being ran by individuals that are not athletes.
Right.
Why do they not create a board of bipartisan standards
Yeah.
so that way that you can give the benefit of the doubt on either side of the vote?
No, absolutely, because beyond that, what you're talking about, the mental state for all of these athletes, possibly, and I don't know this for a fact, but okay, let's say that what she's doing is fine here. Now she's going to compete in the Olympics in a few years, and I don't know where it is next, but what if they have different set of regulations than what the US has on it? And now could that country or the Olympic Committee say, because this happened, you're not allowed to compete at all in these Olympics? So destroying her dream, destroying her future to an extent, because something that's allowed here is not allowed under their regulations.
That's correct.
So we got to get this on the same page across the board, because there's so many people that everything they've worked for and trained for could be completely thrown out the door.
No, you're absolutely right. And like I say, that still goes old mindset.
Mm-hmm.
All of the old myths need to be debunked. And from there, the research needs to be put into place so that way we can create a new standard. Um, if there was a way that we could do a fundraiser to create and provide the research, we definitely should start
Absolutely.
looking at doing that. That's one of the things that's missing in the current place right now is a standard of research that is accurate, that is not that is not screwed to favor this agency that's government funded that still has cannabis as a Schedule One.
Right.
Oh, it has to be changed.
Absolutely. But here is something that could be helping with that change. Have you heard about this? Cannabis Museum.
Okay, I haven't heard that one.
Okay, so we got an individual, April Aristot. She got a license to open a recreational cannabis dispensary in Boston. And she states, if I were successful in the stint of being a producer of medical marijuana in Connecticut, that's where she started. There'd be a difference with her new business, though. She wanted to have a mission enter the core social justice cannabis museum. Rather than simply exploring the history of the plant, the museum, which opened in March of 2021, along with her dispensary, focuses on the inequalities of the American drug policy through a series of changing exhibits. A lawyer with a biotech background, she is hoping that in some way her museum, for which she serves as the executive director, will be able to change the policy towards the better, or at least change people's perspectives about cannabis. Now, so far, the museum, which is a nonprofit, is making serious headway. Not only is it attracted a diverse pool of investors, some of who have been incarcerated as a result of the drug wars, but a new location will be opening in Portland, Maine in May. And understandably, her and her team are excited about this milestone period. Now their goal is to spread the word about the new location as well as score some sponsorships and donations towards it. Recently, she spoke about the genesis of the museum, the exhibits, and what she would like every person to come away with after visiting either location. How big could a cannabis museum be in this fight, in this education, in this advancement?
That's total education. That is a huge, huge win and step. The state of Maine has always been a supporter for almost well over a decade for cannabis. It's
Yes.
legal recreationally, it's legal medicinally. So you got two thumbs up in that state. So you know, I salute and commend the governor and the leadership in that state that still decides to put the equity back into the people.
Well, and the thing is, too, hopefully she branches even further, but she's got one in Maine, so East Coast, and then one in Portland, Oregon. So you've got that in the West Coast. So you've got accessibility now on both coasts. It'd be great to kind of go more in middle America, but what she's doing is absolutely fantastic. And hopefully this moves forward in a big, big way. So maybe we need to make a road trip to Maine and Portland. What do you think?
It's a long ride to Maine. I did it once. Um, it's definitely a long ride, but absolutely. Both states are very, very unique. A great deal of conservatism in those states, but at the same time, they still see things both ways. They're not just limited and just look at things one way, and that's why it's legal on both
Right.
sides. You got talking about two different sides of the country, East Coast, West Coast, and just so happen they have a common denominator named Portland.
Right.
so so
Right.
nah, hats off to them.
So now here's a question. You and I didn't get to talk about this last week. Like I said, I attended it on the webinar via online, but did you hear about what the Georgia Senate did last Wednesday at roughly almost 4:20 p.m.?
No, what they do?
So they had their series of the meetings. I think there was four or five. I think it was five because I think you have to have an uneven amount. Five people who voted for the medical cannabis dispensaries in Georgia, and they voted unanimous yes. The dispensaries are expected to open within a few weeks, nearly 8 years after the lawmakers first approved the MMJ program, which, according to the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, the medical marijuana retailers could open as early as later this month. Georgia is among 40 states and the District of Columbia with a medical marketing program. More than 26,000 MMJ patients and 19,000 caregivers in Georgia are registered with the state, the AJC reports. Now, under the Georgia law, qualified patients can legally possess up to 200 fluid ounces of low THC oil, not exceeding 5 milligrams of THC. Flowers, edibles, and vape cartridges are banned in the Georgia's MMJ program. But like I stated, they did vote unanimously to move forward with this last Wednesday. So, qualified conditions include AIDS, cancer, Crohn's disease, seizure disorders. The state issued Class 1 production license last September to Biotechnical Sciences and Trulieve of Georgia, which are permitted to open 6 dispensaries each. So we're looking at what, 12 dispensaries, possibly? But no patient access to MMJ, as legislators and regulators have been slow to pass the implementation laws. Now, under the MMJ program, rules approved in January, Georgia will eventually license up to 6 companies to manufacture and sell low THC oil. So, what are your thoughts on that
That,
right now?
um, it's a start. Uh, it sounds like they're still trying to perfect the legislation and the regulation, and that's why they're limited to just a handful to get started.
Now, one thing I thought was interesting, and it was good that they did have the webinar. I think we posted something on one of our pages at least. Our good friend Chris was the one who gave me that information. He was attending it as well. He actually videoed and put it on his socials. But it was all a webinar. There was nothing in person. No questions were taken during this. So to me, it's good and bad. Glad that they voted to move forward, but you didn't allow individuals to actually come, to be there, to raise their questions, their concerns, to discuss this. It was all led by this group via webinar. It took maybe what, 25, 30 minutes, and that was it. Done. In and out. Don't
Now
we
that,
need to have an open discussion to truly move forward with this? And why are they
it,
not allowing us to do such?
now I definitely need an open format. Um, I think the reason why the restriction is one, you still have big pharma that
Right.
is still paying and paving the way for things to be looked at and viewed a certain way. They have really literally a monopoly
Yeah.
on the opiates. Number two, for the politicians that do take the donations and the benefits from that, they will still turn that blind eye. They will still stand on the old outlook on the industry.
No, absolutely. And if we've got anybody that's listening to this that's in, the politics, I understand it might be, at least in this state, it might be a little bit of a stigma still associated there, but we've got to find a way to have open discussions, even if that means, guess what? We do it without the political people involved. We create the forum where they come together, discuss it, and it keeps growing and keeps building and keeps moving in a true open in-person format, to the point where, guess what? You can't turn that blind eye anymore. You've got to allow us to speak and hear us out, because these people are what? Representative of the people, by the people, and for the people. But right now, it only seems like they're by the people. I don't see anything else for the most part as for the people. Do you?
I hear you, and you hit it right on the head with that statement. Um, it's gonna take a tremendous leader who has the knowledge, but who's also been exposed as
Right.
well, to have a clear understanding of what it takes to make that decision. You can't make a decision on something that you don't know and you don't
Yeah.
understand, so you're going to be opposed to it. And that's, unfortunately, that's what's continued to happen from one month to the next, going into the next year, until we have somebody to actually push for that change and see that change through.
No, absolutely. And one of the things I would love for, especially our politicians, but people in general, guess what? It's okay to say, I don't know about that. I haven't done my research. I'm not educated on it. Don't just come out and say no. Say that, hey, I don't know exactly everything about it right now. Let me be educated so I can make an informed decision. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
None of
Nate,
us know everything.
that trait takes a great and tremendous amount of humility to be able to accept any
Right.
deficiency that you have about yourself. And a lot of the world leaders will not say that. They will not do that. They want to look like they know all and they say
Right.
all. Um, Only the true people, true of heart, true of intentions, who are for the people, will say that they'll go and educate themselves even further, um, to be a better commander in chief or a better leader of the state, whether it's a governor, whether it's a mayor. Those individuals, and it's very rare for someone to express that level of humility
And that
and
was about to be my
humbleness.
next point. Right. My next point was going to be, guess what? Unfortunately, leaders, and this isn't just politics, this could be leaders of companies, leaders of sports teams, anything. A lot of times when they're in that position, to say that, that shows a sign of weakness, a sign that you're unsure of yourself, that you're could be exposed as a leader, and they don't want to show that. But yet, there shouldn't be anything wrong with that. It's just like what we're discussing about mental health. It's okay to say, I'm not okay. I need help. Something's wrong. But we are in a society, in a world that for individuals to show that, that's looked down upon. And it shouldn't be. Unfortunately, it is looked down upon.
That goes along the line with bullying, Nate. And anybody who can exploit your weakness, they'll bully you.
Correct. And that's the problem, too, like we've discussed before. As we are about to get into a discussion here about how does cannabis affect my mental health, because you got both sides of the coin, says it does and it doesn't. People as a whole, unfortunately, not everybody is open to you being able to discuss what's going on with you mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it may be, because there's so many out there that, though they say, I'm a friend, I'm here to listen to you, I'm here to help, a lot of times they will use that as a form of leverage against you at some point. Sad to say, but it is true.
It is. It definitely is.
So you've got to be careful with that. Now, here's the question: how does cannabis affect my mental health? In this discussion, we're going to show both sides, because let's be honest here, I think that it does help, and it does, and it can, I'm not going to say it does, it can hurt you. And we're going to talk a little bit about why. So people who use cannabis because they want to feel something different, and sometimes they do, but using cannabis can affect your health. You might find cannabis makes you feel worse, especially if you already have challenges with your mental health. And as we talk about it more, one of those reasons is there are people who develop paranoia. There are people who develop a feel of other type things, suicidal inquisitions and whatnot. But a lot of that because they're not educated enough to know what the dosage is, what product can help them, how it can help them, what signs to look for. So sometimes cannabis can make you feel anxiety, panic, or paranoia more intense. Young people who use cannabis are at a risk of developing mental health issues. Now, this is a study done back in 2017, so this was a little while ago. It may also increase the risk of psychosis in some people. Psychosis is when you start to believe strange things, see or hear things that aren't there. Now, at the same point, guess what? The medicine that we're currently giving people who are diagnosed with mental health issues can do the same thing. But these are not natural products. These are manually made by man. They have different prescriptions, different levels. So we are introducing the body into a drug that creates more of a psychosis. The risk of developing it can be higher if you start using when you were younger. They're stating that the risk is higher in other people in your family if they also have mental health challenges. Now, a scientific study, as I said, in 2017, we've come a long way in the last 6-7 years. They linked marijuana use to the increased risk of developing a disorder, including schizophrenia. They're stating that the risk is more than 4 times greater for people who use, keyword here, high potency on a daily basis, compared with those who have never used it, according to the Lancet study in 2019. One study found by eliminating it in adolescents will reduce a global rate of schizophrenia by 10%. So, before we go to the next part, what do you feel about that study? All right, I'll come back in just a minute. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Just give me 1 second, Nate. 1 second.
You're good. I'm going to talk a little bit about this while I'm waiting for you to come back. They're saying that doctors and lawmakers in California, which of course is interesting because California is a lot more open to this stuff. They want cannabis producers to warn consumers of this and other health risks on their packaging labels and in advertising, similar to the requirements of cigarettes. So, personally, I don't think that's an issue because we need to be able to have proper labeling, talk about this just like we do with alcohol, cigarettes, anything else, but it should be done in opiates, which it's not. And opiates are prescribed probably 10-1 over this, maybe even higher. They also want sellers to distribute health brochures to first-time consumers outlining the risk of cannabis poses to use, drivers, and those who are pregnant, especially that have a higher concentrate of THC, the chemical which is primarily responsible for the mental health effects in this product on patients. So, while waiting for you to be able to come back and retort in a moment, some studies do find that people who use cannabis are more likely to experience depression. But again, we as a nation, as doctors, are prescribing these mental health drugs to individuals who literally, I would say almost 100% of the time, they literally state if you develop or if you experience suicidal tendencies, ideations by taking this drug, please discuss this with us. Almost every drug out there that's supposed to help individuals has that side effect. And this is not a man-made product. These are products that are being made by pharmacies, by scientists, drug mixes, but yet the cannabis is a naturally grown plant. And we have that on almost everything. And actually, it's interesting because my son pointed that out. He said, why is it that a drug that is supposed to help an individual with anxiety, with depression, with mental problems, literally it states this could be one of the side effects. The side effect is not helping what the drug is supposed to be intended for, which is absolutely crazy. Now, going on a little bit further, it isn't clear if cannabis causes depression or how much social situation and other factors contribute to these studies. Cannabis can both improve and worsen anxiety. We know a lot of people who have anxiety, who take this, who it helps with. Many people that you and I have had on here that we know personally, it all helps, depending on the individual and other factors, and more research is needed. Now, this particular study came out 6 months ago that states there are many other factors involved with it. It's not just that it can cause a person to have higher anxiety, and more research is needed, which I agree upon. And in this research, they say there is no clear evidence that cannabis directly causes depression. So it kind of seems like we're backtracking a little bit. We're saying 6, 7 years ago, here's all these issues. It can cause it, but yet it's saying maybe it's not. There's other factors that need to be looked at. So, Sam, if you've got a chance now, what are your thoughts and your retort on that so far?
This is my retort on cannabis causing depression. Cannabis it mellows you out.
Right.
It literally cuts the jagged edge off of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So there there are no contributory factors to depression on that end. Though if you have chronic use,
Right.
that can create other medical conditions or side effects from the use, because there are side effects from the use.
Absolutely.
Those can contribute to other forms. I wouldn't say depression, but if we had the research to validate it, that question would be answered.
No, absolutely. And what's crazy is, as a society, as a nation, for example, I mentioned earlier today about my friend who passed. Most of the times in society, when you bring something like that up, what is the normal response somebody has? Of course, my condolences and that. Hey, let's go get a drink. Let's go talk. Alcohol is a depressant, but we use that in a form to try to get you out of your depressed state. How crazy is that?
Um, the one thing I can say about alcohol is this: the side effects is cirrhosis of the liver,
Mm-hmm.
long-term use.
Correct.
The side effects, of course, is intoxication. If you go beyond your body fat index to the consumption, of course, it's going to be intoxication.
Right.
Um, I totally feel for the history of alcohol that alcohol itself is a downer.
Yes.
It, it brings you down even further. Um, Depending on what level of issues that you have at the moment of consumption
Mm-hmm.
determines how your anger is amplified
Correct.
or your sadness is subtracted.
Yep. And of course, also, like we're saying here, where it talks about other social situations. Well, guess what? Same thing happens with alcohol. An individual, for example, who goes out with a group of friends, who goes back to their house, their apartment, and they're by themselves, their mindset's going to be different than that couple that has had some drinks, the same amount possibly, and go back to where they are together, because a different social situation. So when you've been drinking and you're sitting by yourself, your mind's going to react differently than if you're with someone.
Right.
although alcohol still is a depressant. But, it's a great point because you've got different levels. Now, a small team of mental health care researchers from St. Joseph's Healthcare and Hamilton and McMaster's University, which are both in Canada, have found evidence that suggests the effectiveness of cannabis for treating mental illness such as depression and insomnia may depend on the severity of symptoms. In their study published in the Journal of Comprehensive Psychiatric, the group analyzed data from a group of strain print mobile app users, which I'm not familiar with that app, but prior research and evidence have suggested that cannabis may reduce symptoms for some experiencing mental health problems. In this new effort, the team in Canada studied the impact of cannabis on people experiencing depression, insomnia, excessive irritability, PMS, PTSD, and intrusive thoughts. So it looks like we've got some research being done, but how quick will we find out more on that?
And now, where's that research derived out of?
Canada.
Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Canada is so far ahead of the United States right now when it comes to that. They're in a category on their own. They're they're part of the leaders of this initiative worldwide.
Right.
So I can't even make a comparison to what we're going on here in the States.
No, I agree. And that's what's kind of also sad. We've got our, whatever you want to call it, our sistering country, our brothers to the north. We have open trade. We have open communication. We have open everything with them. Why are we not having our medical staffs go and talk to them? Now, I know the answer, but just throwing it out there. That's crazy, isn't it?
Now, is it crazy? I just want to go on a side note about Canada when it comes to medical service and medical support. Canada gives free medical to all of their citizens. I want you to think about that. They give free medical to all of their citizens. That means they want all of their people healthy.
Right.
They want to give them all the support services they need. They care about their lives. I've been to a number of provinces in Canada. You rarely see homelessness in that country. It's there. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's not everywhere. It's there because life can catch and take advantage of the best of us. If you're just not paying attention, or if you're so focused and driven on one thing but never see that blind side effect coming, some of us are a snap away from being homeless. So you just still look at overall what level of support services are there. You don't hear about these mass shootings in Canada as much as you hear about in the United States.
Right. So now,
there's a lot of things you can't compare.
No, absolutely. Now, there's one thing I do want to compare, and there's a reason for this, and we're not going to go too steamrolling into it. But for example, a couple of years ago when Bernie Sanders was running for president, and he kept talking about the health care and all this stuff, and he kept talking about Denmark. Okay, I'm going to use Denmark for the example. My grandmother's from there. America's tax rate, roughly, if you include your federal tax, state tax, all this stuff, we're doing roughly, I don't know, what, 22, 23% of your taxes, of your money goes to a tax in some shape or form. Now, Denmark's tax rate fluctuates, and it goes between 58 and 65% a year of your income is taxed. Okay, that's how they get the healthcare there. But in comparison to Canada, guess what? Canada is almost in the exact same as we are. American federal income tax brackets range from 10% to 35%, whereas Canada ranges from 15 to 29. They're in the same realm that we are. So why can't we do what they are medically? That's apples to apples.
Those are interesting stats. I didn't even realize it was that close.
Right. And that's why I was bringing that up, because, to compare us to Denmark's not fair. Denmark has less people in their country compared to what the state of Georgia does. and their tax rate is 2.5, almost 3 times higher than ours. Canada's is the same. That's apples to apples.
Mm.
That's a fair comparison. So
It
we
is.
can't do what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to throw that number out to you, because that's interesting, isn't it? So
Very interesting.
this strain print app, which we need to see if it's available in America, I'm not sure if it is. Here's what's interesting about what Canada's doing. The app allows users to record their type of illness. So as they use the product, they can go into the app and talk about it. They can talk about the type of illness, their level or degree of symptoms, the concentrates of the cannabis they're using for the treatment of their illness, the product they use, i.e. edible, oil, flower, etc. And after attaining and analyzing the data from 1,300 adult users and applying the artificial intelligence model, the researchers found some patterns. They noted that the severity of the symptoms could play a role in how beneficial the cannabis might be to the symptoms. They found, for example, that many of the users reporting their symptoms as high reported little to no help with depression subsequent to their cannabis use. In fact, they reported that cannabis made them feel worse. But remember, this is on the high potency end. So maybe they need to make it more regulated on a certain percent. Now, however, with that, many users who reported minor depression symptoms reported that using the cannabis improved their symptoms. So those who have the high end of depression, it's not helping as much, but those who have low to minimal maintainable actually reported that it's helping it. Now, in sharp contrast, the opposite seemed to be the case for those experiencing insomnia. Many of the users who reported having minor symptoms found that taking cannabis did little to help them sleep, which I find that interesting, don't you?
It is.
I would think that it would help you sleep.
Without question, what I want to say about it is when you're relaxed, you can sleep like a baby.
Right.
When you have anxiety, you can't.
No.
Um, when you have cannabis intoxication, I can say that you may have a touch of anxiety that will not allow you to relax.
Now, here's the second point to that that's interesting. Remember, we said that those who have a high level of depression, that the cannabis didn't seem to help them. But those who have minimal form of the depression, the cannabis did help. Now, those who have minor symptoms of insomnia, it did not seem to help them. However, those who reported severe symptoms of insomnia found that it did help them. Interesting how it fluctuates, right? High depression, not much help. Low, it helps. High insomnia, it helps. Low insomnia doesn't. The results, the team notes, suggest it might be possible to predict whether taking cannabis might help reduce those with mental health symptoms due to the research they've done thus far, but they still want more studies.
And I would also like to add to that study the environment. Um, if you reduce the static in the environment,
Mhm.
that could also reduce the stress as well.
Absolutely. So, in closure on that part, the research team acknowledges that their study was limited and that caution should be used when interpreting their results. And I agree with that 100%, especially for those using cannabis products to self medicate their own mental health problems. So, in closing on all of this, honestly, that says right there that research is being done, but you need to A, monitor how it affects you, but you also need to talk to someone who is a true doctor in the cannabis range to see how this could help with your mental health.
Absolutely.
That would be my take on it. So I know that you've got somewhere to be shortly. We're almost closing up on the hour anyways. We covered a good bit today on multiple range. So what are your thoughts in closing? And of course, as always, where can people find you, connect with you, and your thoughts for this 1st of May?
For the 1st of May, we definitely want to focus on mental health. We do have some some shows for this month that's already programmed to support mental health even more. We got Marcus coming on. Uh, yeah,
Marky's going to come and share her story
Marky,
shortly.
Marky, Marcus coming on to give us support for Mental Health Month. So please tune in. These are professionals that one either have can tell you the day in the life of the experiences, um, the outlook of how she got through it, and then Marcus, who is licensed and certified to talk through any circumstance that you're actually going through, and he can actually coach you into being in a better place. So please tune in and support. We're going to keep bringing everything that we can possibly bring to you to bring not only awareness, but insight into what's going on from one state to the next. Thank you for tuning in. Check me out, Big Boy Sam with 2 M's on IG. Follow me, Sammy Mumphrey, on LinkedIn.
And I will be putting up a lot of different things, of course, on our pages about mental health, where you can go to get help. Please, if you have any of these symptoms, any of these ideas, seek help. There is nothing wrong with seeking help. Seeking help is a sign of strength, and I will say that every day if I have to. I believe in that 100%. Me personally, reach out to me, DJ NQ, on either Twitter or Instagram. Follow our Matcha pages on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Bring people into this discussion. You never know who you might help with. Hopefully, one of the discussions we have this month, because mental health is an everyday thing. It's not a month thing, a year thing. It's an everyday thing. Take time to reach out to someone, ask how they're doing, and be genuine about it. You never know what that small one word might do for someone. So until next time, take care of each other, reach out to people, take a moment, not just for yourself, but for others as well. But do take a moment for yourself. You have to take care of your own mental health and not just everybody else's. Look forward to seeing you guys next Wednesday. Be safe. Enjoy. We got a lot of events coming up this weekend, not just here in Atlanta, but everywhere. Go for a walk. Get out in nature. And we look forward to seeing you next week. And everybody be safe, be careful, and we love you.